Hello friends, we're nearing the end of Advent season and are nearing Christmas. I was reading a text that generally doesn't belong among Advent texts or Christmas texts, and it's actually Philippians 2. It's a hymn to Christ, and some people think that Paul actually did not write it, but that he quoted it within the letter to Philippians in order to make a particular point. He speaks about Jesus Christ and says, who, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness. And being found in human form, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. Therefore God highly exalted him and gave him the name that is above every other name, so that in the name of Jesus every knee should bend in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. As I said, this is generally not considered to be an Advent text, and rightly so in some ways, because emphasis of it falls on the bottom of the journey that Jesus went on his shameful death on the cross, and also on what happens after that, namely glorification of Christ and his universal lordship. And yet, when you consider it carefully, the text tells us something very important. There is a political message here, because in Paul's time, Roman emperors liked to think of themselves as being equal to God, isotheoi. Now, Jesus, Paul says, who was equal to God, he did not cling to that power. He did not exploit it, says the translation here. Actually, what it means, he did not hold on to it as if it were a spoil of war, that if he lost, he would lose something essential to him. He did not hold to it as if he needed it in order to find himself legitimate in wielding power, and in wielding power to his own benefit. Instead, Jesus Christ emptied himself. Now, some people think that this self-emptying designate Jesus putting behind the attributes of divinity, and maybe that is the case. But I think the more immediate implication is that he actually, in the world in which he came into, became a nobody. A small, insignificant child born in insignificant corner of the world that was ruled by great emperors of Rome. Now, I think best description for this act of Christ is to describe it as the humility of God, which is a strange thing to say about God, that God is humble, but indeed, this is what Apostle Paul is here describing. Now, it's important to note that before Paul quoted this hymn to Christ, he gave ethical instructions to Philippians. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others, treat others as if they were more important than you. Let each of you look not to your own interests, but to interests of others. Then he pointed to Jesus as an example. He who was equal with God regarded others as more important than himself and did an act of ultimate service for his benefit. Now, I think the two comments, regard others as if they were more important than yourself, and look out not for your own interests, but for interests of others, are intimately related. If I regard myself as more important, I will make sure that I regard primarily, if not exclusively, my own interests only, because anything that isn't in my interest diminishes my standing. If, on the other hand, I want to treat others if they were more important to me, I will look for their own interest in order to help them in what they are trying to achieve and who they are trying to become. This is the lesson of Christmas. Regard others. Treat others as if they mattered more than you do. From all of us here at the Yale Center for Faith and Culture, I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I'll leave you with this wish. Let us all follow in the footsteps of our humble God in this coming year.